Get out. You're useless. Pack your things and leave by morning. Elliot Grayson's voice thundered through the glass-walled mansion in Aspen, Colorado, as he dismissed another trembling maid, the 79th in 3 years. Once a tech titan whose brilliance lit up boardrooms, Elliot now languished, paralyzed and bitter. His wheelchair a constant reminder of a life stolen by a car crash. His rage filled the halls, driving away everyone, until Lila Carter arrived. Her quiet strength and unyielding compassion sparked something no one expected in a man consumed by despair. This is a story of a woman whose identity reshaped a broken legacy, turning a tyrant's world upside down. Stay until the end to witness how one heart changed everything. Hit subscribe, share where you're watching from, and let us know what time it is. Join us for this unforgettable journey. Elliot Grayson's voice sliced through the air like a blade, echoing off the sleek glass walls of his Aspen mansion. The young maid, barely 20, froze, her hands trembling as she clutched a silver tray. A single teacup rattled, its delicate clink a stark contrast to the venom in his tone. Her eyes welled with tears, but Elliot's gaze, cold and unyielding from his wheelchair, offered no mercy. "I said now!" he barked, his hands gripping the armrest so tightly his knuckles whitened. The maid scurried out, the heavy oak door slamming behind her, leaving the cavernous room in oppressive silence. Outside, the Colorado mountains loomed, their snow-capped peaks indifferent to the storm within. The mansion, a marvel of modern architecture with floor-to-ceiling windows, seemed to mock its master's confinement. Once, Elliot Grayson had been the darling of Silicon Valley, a 35-year-old tech prodigy whose innovations revolutionized data encryption. His face had graced magazine covers, his name synonymous with brilliance. But 3 years ago, a car crash stole his legs, his empire's spotlight, and his hope. Now, society's whispers branded him a has-been, a fallen king whose rage filled the void where glory once reigned. In 3 years, 79 maids had fled his wrath, each dismissed for infractions as trivial as a misaligned pillow or a lukewarm coffee. Lila Carter stepped into the storm on a crisp September morning, her breath visible in the mountain air as she approached the mansion's towering entrance. At 28, she carried herself with a quiet grace, her dark eyes sharp with determination, her beauty softened by a warmth that belied her hardships. She needed this job. Her mother's hospital bills loomed like a specter, and the pay here, though hard-earned, was enough to keep hope alive. Dressed in a simple navy uniform, her hair neatly braided, she knocked, sound swallowed by the vastness of the estate. Mr. Hargrove, the butler, greeted her with a tight-lipped nod. His gray eyes assessed her, not unkindly, but with the weariness of a man who'd seen too many come and go. "Miss Carter, you're the new hire. Follow me. Don't expect pleasantries. He's in a mood." Lila nodded, her heart steady despite the warning. She'd faced worse than a temperamental boss. Poverty and prejudice had forged her resilience. The foyer was a cathedral of wealth, marble floors gleaming under a chandelier that sparkled like captured starlight. Lila's shoes clicked softly as she followed Hargrove to the study where Elliot waited. The room was a shrine to his past, shelves lined with tech awards, a framed Forbes cover, and a photo of a younger Elliot, standing tall, grinning beside a prototype that had made him billions. Now he sat slumped in a sleek black wheelchair, his once chiseled features sharpened by bitterness, his blue eyes cold as the mountain frost. "You're late," he snapped, not looking up from the tablet in his lap. His voice was low, dangerous, like a storm gathering strength. Lila glanced at her watch. She was 3 minutes early. "I'm sorry, Mr. Grayson," she said evenly, her tone neither defensive nor submissive. "I'll ensure it doesn't happen again." He scoffed, finally meeting her gaze, his eyes raking over her with disdain. "Another one who thinks they can handle this. You'll be gone by week's end." Lila didn't flinch. She stepped forward, setting her bag down with deliberate care. "I'm here to work, sir. Just tell me what you need." Her voice was calm, a quiet anchor in his turbulence. Elliot's lips curled into a sneer. "What I need is competence. Move my wheelchair to the window. Properly. Last girl couldn't even manage that." He gestured to a spot by the massive window, where sunlight spilled over the rugged peaks. Lila approached, her movements precise but gentle. She adjusted the wheelchair's position, ensuring it faced the view he wanted, her hands steady despite his scrutiny. But as she stepped back, the wheel caught on a rug's edge, tilting slightly. Elliot's face darkened. "Are you blind or just stupid?" he roared, his voice cracking with rage. "You think you can waltz in here, a nobody, and do better than the rest? Get it right, or you're out by sundown." The words stung, sharp with the venom of prejudice, but Lila's expression remained composed. She knelt, her fingers deftly untangling the wheel, her eyes meeting his with unflinching resolve. "It's fixed, Mr. Grayson," she said softly, standing. "Anything else?" For a moment silence hung heavy. Elliot's jaw tightened, his anger faltering under her steady gaze. Something flickered in his eyes, confusion perhaps, or the faintest crack in his armor. He waved her off, muttering, "Just go. Clean something." As Lila left the study, Hargrove lingered in the hall, his brows raised. "Most don't last the first hour," he said quietly. Lila offered a small smile. "I'm not most." She moved to the kitchen, her heart pounding but her resolve unbroken. She overheard two maids whispering near the pantry. 79 and counting. He's a monster now, no one stays." Lila's grip tightened on her cleaning cloth. She thought of her mother, frail but fighting in a hospital bed, and steeled herself. She wasn't here for Elliot's approval. She was here to survive. In the study, Elliot stared out the window, the mountains blurring before his eyes. Lila's calm defiance lingered in his mind, an unwelcome intrusion. He clenched his fists, hating the flicker of curiosity she'd sparked. He dismissed others for less, but something about her poise, her refusal to cower, unsettled him. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of his own cruelty, a shadow cast across the glory he'd lost. But he pushed it down, bearing it beneath the familiar comfort of anger. She'd fail like the rest. He'd make sure of it. Yet as Lila polished the marble counters, her hands steady and her heart resolute, she carried a quiet strength that promised something more. In this house of broken dreams, a spark had been lit, one that could either ignite a new beginning or be snuffed out by the darkness within. The Aspen Mansion's silence was a living thing, heavy and suffocating, broken only by the occasional creak of polished floors under Lila Carter's careful steps. 3 days had passed since her arrival, and Elliot Grayson's rage remained a constant storm. His demands were relentless. Rearrange the library by noon, polish the silverware to a mirror sheen, serve his coffee at precisely 185 degrees. Each task was a test, each failure a spark for his fury. Yet Lila moved through the chaos with a quiet grace, her dark eyes steady, her hands deft, as if she'd been forged in a fire fiercer than his temper. She wasn't here for praise. She was here for her mother, wasting away in a Denver hospital, her bills a ticking clock Lila couldn't outrun. The study, Elliot's sanctuary of bitterness, was where she found him that morning, his wheelchair positioned by the vast window overlooking the snow-dusted Rockies. His once broad shoulders slumped, his face etched with lines no 35-year-old should bear. On the desk lay a relic of his past, a framed tech innovator cover from 5 years ago, showing a grinning Elliot, legs strong, eyes alight with ambition. Lila paused, her dust cloth hovering over the frame. The man in the photo was a stranger to the one before her, whose voice now snapped like a whip. "What are you staring at? Clean it! Don't gawk!" Lila met his gaze, unflinching. "Yes, Mr. Grayson," she said, her voice calm as she wiped the glass, her fingers lingering on the image of a man who once inspired millions. Elliot's eyes narrowed, sensing her scrutiny. "You think you know me because you saw a picture?" he sneered. "You know nothing. Get back to work." She nodded, moving to the shelves, but the weight of his words lingered, laced with a pain he couldn't hide. That evening, as twilight painted the mountains purple, Lila was summoned to the dining room. Elliot sat alone at the mahogany table, a half-eaten plate of salmon pushed aside. His hands trembled slightly, the effort of holding a fork betraying the pain his medication barely dulled. "This is cold," he growled, shoving the plate toward her. "Fix it, now." Lila took the plate without a word, her steps steady as she headed to the kitchen. But as she reheated the meal, she heard a sound that stopped her cold, a low, choked sob from the dining room. She peered through the doorway. Elliot's head was bowed, his hands clutching the edge of the table, his shoulders shaking. The man who'd terrorized 79 maids was crying, a raw, childlike sound that pierced the silence. Lila hesitated, her instinct to comfort warring with the risk of his wrath. She stepped forward, her voice soft as a whisper. "Mr. Grayson, are you okay?" His head snapped up, eyes red-rimmed, blazing with shame and fury. "Get out!" he roared, but his voice cracked, betraying the vulnerability he despised. Instead of retreating, Lila set the warm plate down gently. "My mama used to say pain's a heavy load, but you don't have to carry it alone," she said, her tone neither pitying nor accusing. Elliot's jaw tightened, his hands balling into fists. "You think you can fix me with your folksy nonsense?" he spat. "You're nothing but a maid." The words were meant to wound, but Lila's expression didn't falter. "Maybe," she said, "but I'm here, and I'm not leaving." She turned away, leaving him in stunned silence, her words a quiet defiance that echoed in the room. The next morning, Lila met Nathan Grayson in the foyer, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the mansion's oppressive air. Nathan, older and wearier than his brother, carried the weight of a family fractured by tragedy. "You're still here," he said, his voice tinged with surprise. "Most don't last a week." Lila offered a small smile. "I'm stubborn that way." Nathan's eyes softened. "He wasn't always like this," he said, glancing toward the study. "Before the accident, Elliot was electric. He built things, inspired people. He'd give you the shirt off his back. Now he's a stranger even to himself." Lila nodded, absorbing his words. "He's still in there somewhere," she said. "I saw it last night." Nathan raised an eyebrow, but before he could ask more, a crash echoed from the study. They hurried in to find Elliot glaring at a shattered glass, water pooling on the hardwood. "Useless!" he shouted, his voice raw. "Can't even hold a damn glass!" Lila moved swiftly, kneeling to clean the shards, her movements calm despite his fury. "It's just a glass, Mr. Grayson," she said. "We'll get another." Elliot's eyes locked onto hers, his anger faltering under her unshakable composure. For a moment he seemed to see her, not as a servant, but as a person who refused to break. "Why do you stay?" he muttered almost to himself. Lila paused, her hands full of broken glass. "Because someone has to," she said simply, standing and meeting his gaze. "And I'm not afraid of you." As she left the room, Nathan watched, a flicker of hope in his eyes. In the kitchen, Lila leaned against the counter, her heart racing. She thought of her mother, frail but fierce, and of the man in the study, trapped in a prison of his own making. She didn't know if she could reach him, but she'd seen a crack in his armor, a fleeting glimpse of the man he used to be. And that was enough to keep her going, for now. In the study, Elliot stared at the Tech Innovator cover, his fingers tracing the frame. Lila's words echoed in his mind, a quiet challenge to the darkness that had consumed him. He hated her for it, hated the spark of hope she'd ignited, a spark he'd long believed dead. But as the mountains faded into dusk, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, ever so slightly, in the abyss of his broken glory. The Aspen mansion glittered under the morning sun, its glass walls catching the light like a prism, but within, a chill lingered that no warmth could dispel. Lila Carter moved through the grand hallways, her steps silent on the marble, her navy uniform crisp despite the weight of Elliot Grayson's demands. A week had passed since she'd glimpsed the broken man beneath his rage, and though his temper still flared, her quiet resolve had carved a fragile truce. She dusted the chandeliers, arranged his medication with precision, and endured his barbs with a composure that seemed to unsettle him. But today, a new storm was brewing, one that arrived in a sleek black Mercedes, its engine purring like a predator outside the estate's gates. Victoria Langston, Elliot's older sister, stepped out, her silver heels clicking with purpose. At 40, she was a vision of calculated elegance. Blonde hair swept into a chignon, her tailored cream suit accentuating a frame honed by yoga and ambition. Her green eyes, sharp as cut emeralds, scanned the mansion with the air of a queen surveying her domain. Lila, polishing a vase in the foyer, caught Victoria's gaze through the glass doors. The look wasn't curiosity, it was appraisal, and it carried a weight that made Lila's spine stiffen. Elliot, darling, Victoria purred as she swept into the study, her voice smooth but edged with intent. Elliot, stationed by the window in his wheelchair, barely glanced up from his tablet. Victoria, he muttered, his tone flat. What do you want? She smiled, undeterred, and perched on the edge of his desk, her fingers brushing a framed photo of their family in happier days. I'm worried about you, she said, her voice dripping with concern that felt rehearsed. This maid you've kept around. Lila, is it? She's not suitable. People talk, you know. The Grayson name can't afford whispers. Elliot's jaw tightened, his eyes flicking toward the door where Lila had last been seen. She does her job, he said curtly, but doubt flickered in his voice, a crack Victoria seized upon. Does she? A woman like her, with no credentials, no pedigree? She's here for more than cleaning, Elliot. Mark my words. Her words were poison, subtle but sharp, planting seeds of suspicion in a mind already clouded by pain and distrust. Lila, unaware of the conversation, was in the kitchen organizing a tray for Elliot's lunch when Nathan Grayson entered. His tie was loosened, his face etched with the strain of managing his brother's fractured empire. You're still here, he said, a faint smile softening his features. That's a record. Lila returned the smile, her hands steady as she sliced apples. I told you, I'm stubborn. Nathan leaned against the counter, his voice low. He's not himself, Lila, but you're getting through to him. I saw it yesterday. He didn't yell when you adjusted his chair. Their conversation was interrupted by the clatter of glass from the hallway. Lila rushed out to find a shattered porcelain figurine, a delicate swan now in pieces on the marble floor. Victoria stood nearby, her expression one of feigned shock. Oh dear, she said, her voice syrupy. How clumsy of you, Lila. That was Mother's favorite. Lila's eyes narrowed. She'd been nowhere near the figurine. Before she could respond, Victoria called out, Elliot, you should see this. Your maid's carelessness is costing us. Elliot wheeled into the hall, his face darkening as he took in the scene. What the hell happened? He demanded, his voice a low growl. Victoria gestured to the shards, her lips curling slightly. She dropped it. Honestly, Elliot, you can't keep someone so reckless. Lila knelt to gather the pieces, her heart pounding but her hands steady. I didn't touch it, Mr. Grayson, she said calmly, meeting his gaze. It was on the table when I last passed by. Elliot's eyes flicked between Lila and Victoria, his anger warring with the memory of Lila's unshakable composure over the past week. You expect me to believe you? He snapped, but his tone lacked its usual venom. Victoria's smile faltered, sensing the shift. Elliot, you can't ignore this, she pressed, her voice sharper now. The Grayson name. Enough, he cut her off, his hands gripping the wheelchair. Clean it up, Lila, and don't let it happen again. As Lila swept the fragments into a dustpan, she caught Nathan's eye. He nodded slightly, a silent promise to investigate. Later in the library, Nathan pulled her aside. Victoria's playing games, he whispered. She's threatened by you. I'm planning a charity gala for Elliot's foundation. Help me with it. Show him what you're capable of. Lila's eyes lit up. A community art auction, she suggested. Local artists, proceeds for the hospital. It'll remind people of the good Elliot used to do. Nathan grinned. You're brilliant. Let's do it. That evening, as Lila arranged Elliot's dinner tray, she noticed him watching her, his usual scowl softened by something unreadable. Why do you bother? He asked abruptly, his voice low. You could leave, like the others. Lila set the tray down, her gaze steady. Because I see more than your anger, Mr. Grayson. I see the man who built something extraordinary, and I think he's still in there. Elliot's breath hitched, his eyes locked on hers, a flicker of hope battling the darkness within. He turned away, muttering, You're wasting your time. But as Lila left the room, the weight of her words lingered, a faint light piercing the shadow Victoria had cast. In the quiet of the mansion, a battle was beginning, not just against prejudice, but for the soul of a man who'd forgotten how to hope. The Aspen mansion stood like a fortress of glass and steel, its gleaming surfaces reflecting the cold morning light. But inside, a storm of accusation was brewing. Lila Carter moved through the grand hallways with her usual quiet grace, her navy uniform pristine, despite the weight of Elliot Grayson's relentless demands. 2 weeks into her tenure, she'd learned to navigate his temper, her steady presence a silent challenge to his bitterness. But today, the air crackled with a new tension, one orchestrated by Victoria Langston's venomous hand. Elliot sat in his study, his wheelchair positioned by the vast window overlooking the snow-dusted Rockies. His face was a mask of fury, his blue eyes blazing as he clutched a crumpled note. On the desk lay the shattered remains of a crystal decanter, a family heirloom, its shards glinting like accusations. Lila entered, summoned by a curt order from Mr. Hargrove, the butler. She sensed the danger immediately, her heart quickening as Elliot's voice cut through the silence. "You did this," he growled, holding up the note. "It was found in your room. Don't lie to me." Lila's eyes flicked to the note, her handwriting nowhere on it, but the words scrawled in sharp ink. The maid broke it, her stomach twisted, recognizing Victoria's handiwork. "Mr. Grayson," she said, her voice calm but firm, "I didn't touch the decanter. I haven't been in this room since yesterday." Elliot's laugh was bitter, hollow. "You expect me to believe you? After everything I've given you? A job? A chance? You're just like the rest, careless and greedy." The words stung, laced with the prejudice Victoria had sown, but Lila stood tall, her dark eyes unwavering. "I'm not a thief or a liar, sir. Check the cameras." Elliot's jaw clenched, his anger faltering under her unyielding composure. Before he could respond, Nathan Grayson burst into the room, his face taut with urgency. "Elliot, stop," he said, holding up his tablet. "I reviewed the footage. It wasn't Lila." He tapped the screen, revealing grainy security video. Victoria, in the dead of night, slipping into the study, her gloved hand nudging the decanter to the floor, her movements deliberate. Lila's breath caught, relief mingling with outrage. Elliot's eyes widened, his hands trembling as he watched the betrayal unfold. "You let her manipulate you," Nathan said, his voice low but sharp. "Lila's done nothing but prove herself, and you're ready to throw her out because of Victoria's lies?" Elliot's gaze darted to Lila, then back to the screen, his anger giving way to a churning guilt. "She's my sister," he muttered, but the words lacked conviction. Lila stepped forward, her voice steady. "I'm here because I believe in doing what's right, Mr. Grayson. For my mama who's fighting to live, and for you because I know you're more than this anger." Her words hung in the air, a quiet thunder that shook Elliot to his core. He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time, her strength, her grace, the fire in her eyes that refused to be dimmed. "Why?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why stay when I make it so hard?" Lila's lips curved into a faint smile. "Because someone has to see you, not just your pain." The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling like snow outside. Nathan broke the tension. "Lila's helping with the charity gala," he said. "Give her a chance to show you what she can do. Don't let Victoria win." Elliot's hands tightened on his wheelchair, his pride warring with the truth he couldn't ignore. "Fine," he said gruffly. "One chance. Don't waste it." Lila nodded, her heart pounding, but her resolve unbroken. As she left the study, Nathan gave her a look of quiet admiration. "You're changing him," he whispered. "Keep going." That afternoon, Lila found Elliot in the therapy room, a sterile space filled with unused equipment, its walls lined with mirrors reflecting his frustration. He'd avoided physical therapy for months, the failure of countless sessions fueling his despair. But Lila, armed with a booklet she'd studied from her mother's nurses, knelt beside him. "Let's try something small," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "Just lift your leg an inch. I'll support you." Elliot scoffed, his eyes dark with doubt. "What's the point? I'm broken." Lila's hand rested lightly on his knee, her touch steadying. "You're not broken, Mr. Grayson. You're still here, and that's enough to start." Her encouragement, free of pity, stirred something in him. With a grunt of effort, he lifted his leg a fraction, his face contorting with pain, but also a flicker of triumph. Lila's smile was radiant. "That's it," she said. "One step at a time." Elliot's breath hitched, his hand brushing hers as she steadied him. the contact lingering a moment too long. For the first time in years, he felt a spark of possibility, a warmth that wasn't just physical. As Lila left the room, Elliot watched her go, his heart a battleground of guilt and gratitude. The decanter's shards still lay on his desk, a reminder of Victoria's betrayal, but it was Lila's touch, her words, that echoed louder. He didn't know if he could trust this feeling, this fragile hope she'd ignited. But as the mountains faded into dusk, he realized he didn't want her to leave. Not just the mansion, but the quiet corner of his soul she'd begun to claim. The Aspen mansion buzzed with a rare energy, its glass walls reflecting the golden glow of the setting sun as preparations for the charity gala transformed the estate into a beacon of hope. Lila Carter, now 3 weeks into her tenure, moved through the chaos with a quiet command. Her navy uniform traded for a simple emerald dress that hugged her frame with understated elegance. The courtyard, usually a silent witness to Elliot Grayson's rage, was alive with string lights, tables draped in ivory linen, and the soft hum of local artists setting up their works for the community auction. Lila's vision, an art gala to fund the local hospital, had taken shape, each detail a testament to her resilience and creativity. Inside the grand ballroom, Nathan Grayson adjusted his tie, his eyes scanning the growing crowd. "You've outdone yourself, Lila," he said, his voice warm with admiration. "This could remind people of the Elliot we used to know." Lila smiled, her hand smoothing a program booklet. "It's not about the past, Nathan. It's about showing what's possible now." Her words carried a quiet fire, born from weeks of enduring Elliot's bitterness and Victoria's schemes. Tonight she wasn't just a maid. She was a force, and the community sensed it. Elliot, stationed in his wheelchair near the courtyard's edge, watched the scene unfold, his face a mask of reluctant curiosity. The pain in his legs was a constant ache, but Lila's presence, her effortless grace as she greeted guests, dulled the edge of his despair. He hadn't wanted to attend, hadn't believed in this charity nonsense, as he'd called it. But Nathan's insistence and Lila's quiet challenge, "You should see what your name can still do, Mr. Grayson," had drawn him out. Now as he watched her guide a shy teenage artist, a boy with a limp who clutched a canvas of vibrant swirls, Elliot felt something stir, something he hadn't felt in years: pride. The boy Miguel hesitated as Lila introduced him to a cluster of donors. "This is his first show," she said, her voice warm, encouraging. "His art tells a story of overcoming." Miguel's eyes lit up, his nervousness fading under her belief in him. The crowd murmured approval, bidding generously on his piece, and Lila's smile was a beacon, radiating a strength that mirrored her own journey. Elliot's hands tightened on his wheelchair, his heart caught in a tug-of-war between cynicism and awe. She was doing what he'd once done, lifting others up, but she did it with a grace he'd never possessed. Victoria Langston's arrival was like a shadow creeping over the sunlit courtyard. Her silver gown shimmered, but her smile was a blade, sharp and calculated. She glided toward Lila, her voice dripping with false warmth. My, Lila, you've certainly made yourself indispensable," she said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "One might wonder what a maid hopes to gain from all this." The words were a dart, aimed to wound, to cast doubt on Lila's motives. The crowd's chatter faltered, eyes turning to Lila, waiting for her to crumble. But Lila didn't falter. She stepped forward, her voice clear, resonant. "I'm here for the same reason as everyone else, to make a difference. This gala isn't about me or my place. It's about people like Miguel, who deserve a chance to shine, and about a community that believes in second chances." Her words rang out, simple but powerful, and the crowd erupted in applause, their warmth drowning out Victoria's venom. Miguel hugged Lila, his eyes shining, and the donors raised their glasses, toasting her vision. Victoria's smile froze, her face a mask of barely concealed rage as she retreated into the crowd, her influence shattered. Elliot watched, his breath shallow, his eyes locked on Lila. Her speech wasn't just a defense, it was a declaration, a mirror held up to the man he'd forgotten how to be. As the auction continued, raising record funds for the hospital, Lila approached him, her expression soft but unwavering. You see it now, don't you? She said quietly. Your name still means something good. Elliot's throat tightened, his usual defenses crumbling. It's not my name they're cheering for, he said, his voice low, almost reverent. It's you. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just them, the noise of the gala fading, the mountains standing silent witness. Lila's hand brushed his as she adjusted his blanket, a fleeting touch that sent warmth through him, a spark he couldn't ignore. You're wrong, she said, her smile gentle. It's us, together. Elliot's heart stuttered, the weight of her words settling deep. He reached for her hand, his fingers lingering on hers, a silent admission of the feelings blooming within him. As the gala wound down, the courtyard glowed with lantern light, and Lila stood beside Elliot, her presence a quiet anchor. Nathan joined them, his eyes bright with hope. You've given him something to believe in, Lila, he whispered. Elliot didn't speak, but his gaze never left her, a mix of gratitude and something deeper, something that felt like love. In that moment, under the aspen stars, the man who'd lost everything began to see a future. Not just for the gala, but for himself with Lila at his side. The Aspen mansion, bathed in the soft gray light of a late September dawn, felt less like a fortress and more like a fragile sanctuary, its glass walls holding back the world's judgment, but not its whispers. Lila Carter moved through the quiet corridors, her steps deliberate, her navy uniform a quiet armor against the storm that still lingered in Elliot Grayson's heart. The charity gala had shifted something in the air, a spark of hope, a crack in Elliot's armor. But the shadow of Victoria Langston's malice loomed, threatening to snuff it out. Lila, now a month into her tenure, carried the weight of that night's triumph, her emerald dress replaced by her usual attire, but her presence glowed brighter than ever. In the library, Elliot sat by the window, his wheelchair angled toward the mountains, their peaks shrouded in mist. The room smelled of old leather and polished wood, a stark contrast to the sterile therapy room where Lila had begun guiding him through small exercises. His hands rested on a worn journal, a relic from his days as a tech visionary, its pages filled with dreams now buried under pain. Lila entered carrying a tray of tea, her movements steady despite the memory of his past cruelties. Good morning, Mr. Grayson, she said, her voice warm but measured, setting the tray beside him. Elliot's eyes flicked to her, softer than they'd been weeks ago, but still guarded. You don't have to keep doing this, he muttered, his voice rough, pretending I'm worth your time. Lila paused, her hand stilling on the teapot. I'm not pretending, she said, her gaze meeting his. I see you, not just the pain you're carrying. Her words, simple but piercing, hung in the air, and for a moment, Elliot's defenses wavered, his fingers tightening on the journal. That evening, as the mansion settled into a rare calm, a cry echoed from Elliot's bedroom. Lila, finishing her task in the kitchen, dropped her cloth and hurried upstairs. She found him slumped in his wheelchair, his face buried in his hands, his shoulders shaking with sobs that tore through the silence. The sight of him, so raw, so broken, clenched her heart. Mr. Grayson, she said softly, kneeling beside him. What's wrong? He flinched at her voice, his eyes red with shame. Leave me alone, he whispered. But there was no venom, only despair. I can't be this anymore. Lila didn't retreat. Instead, she reached for a blanket, draping it over his trembling frame. My mama used to sing to me when things got heavy, she said, her voice a gentle anchor. She began to hum, a soft lullaby her mother had sung through nights of worry, its melody weaving through the room like a thread of light. Elliot's sobs quieted, his breathing slowing as he listened, his hand inching toward hers. When the song ended, he looked at her, his voice barely audible. I've been cruel to you, Lila. I'm sorry. I don't know who I am anymore. Her eyes softened, but she didn't shy away. You're still the man who built something extraordinary, she said. The accident took your legs, but it didn't take that. You just need to remember. Elliot's breath hitched, his fingers brushing hers, a tentative touch that spoke of trust he hadn't offered anyone in years. Why do you stay? He asked, his voice raw. I stay because I believe in you, she said simply, and because I know what it's like to fight for someone you love. The moment was broken by Nathan's arrival the next morning, his face grim as he handed Lila a tablet. A gossip site had published a venomous article claiming Lila was manipulating Elliot for personal gain, her background twisted into a tale of opportunism. "Victoria," Nathan said, his voice tight, "she's trying to tear you down before the gala's glow fades." Lila's jaw clenched, but her resolve held firm. "Let her try," she said. "I'm not here for her approval." Nathan took the fight to the public, releasing a statement through the Grayson Foundation, praising Lila's contributions to the gala and her unwavering dedication. The response was swift. Local media outlets picked up the story, lauding Lila's work, while online communities rallied behind her, drowning out the smear. In the study, Elliot read the statement, his eyes lingering on Lila's name. "You didn't have to defend her," he told Nathan, but his tone lacked its usual edge. Nathan raised an eyebrow. "She's worth defending, Elliot. You know that." That afternoon, Lila guided Elliot through another therapy session, her hands steady as she helped him lift his leg, a movement that was becoming less painful. "You're stronger than you think," she said, her smile a beacon. Elliot's gaze softened, his heart stirring with a feeling he hadn't dared name. "I'm only strong because of you," he said, his voice low, his hand lingering on hers. The touch was electric, a silent confession of the love beginning to take root. As Lila left the room, Elliot watched her go, his journal open to a blank page. For the first time in years, he felt the urge to write, to dream again. Victoria's shadow still loomed, but Lila's light was brighter, and in its glow, Elliot began to see a path forward, not just to healing, but to a life where love could mend what pain had broken. The Aspen mansion glowed under the October sun, its glass walls catching the light like a beacon of renewal. The air, once thick with Elliot Grayson's rage, now hummed with a quiet hope, as if the mountains themselves had exhaled. Lila Carter moved through the courtyard, her steps light, her navy uniform replaced by a simple cream blouse and skirt, a nod to the new role she'd carved in this house of broken dreams. The charity gala's triumph had rippled through the community, its record-breaking funds for the local hospital cementing Lila's place not just in the mansion, but in the hearts of those who'd witnessed her strength. Yet Victoria Langston's shadow lingered, her final gambit a desperate bid to reclaim control. Inside the Grand Library, Elliot sat in his wheelchair, a frame walker beside him, a new addition, a symbol of progress. His face, once etched with bitterness, now carried a cautious light, his blue eyes tracking Lila's every move as she arranged flowers for a small gathering. The past month had transformed him. Each therapy session with Lila chipped away at the despair that had defined him since the accident. His legs, though still weak, responded to her patient guidance, and his heart, long buried under pain, stirred with a love he could no longer deny. "You're fussing too much," he said, his voice gruff but warm. Lila smiled, her dark eyes sparkling. "Someone has to make this place feel alive, Mr. Grayson." The gathering was no lavish gala, but a modest affair for those who truly supported the Grayson Foundation. Local artists, hospital staff, and neighbors who'd seen Lila's impact. As guests arrived, Nathan Grayson greeted them, his usual reserve softened by pride. "You've changed everything, Lila," he whispered, handing her a program with her name listed as co-organizer. "Not just for him, but for all of us." Lila's heart swelled, but her focus remained on Elliot, who watched her from across the courtyard, his expression a mix of gratitude and something deeper. Victoria's arrival was like a chill wind, her silver heels clicking as she swept in, uninvited, her smile a mask of calculated charm. "What a quaint little event," she said, her voice loud enough to draw eyes. "Lila, you've certainly climbed the ranks, haven't you?" The jab was meant to sting, to remind everyone of Lila's place as a maid. But Lila met her gaze, unflinching. "I'm here because I was asked, Ms. Langston," she said, her tone steady, "and because this community deserves it." The guests nodded, their warmth a shield against Victoria's venom. The tension broke when a gossip site published a scathing article that morning, accusing Lila of manipulating Elliot for financial gain. The smear, clearly Victoria's doing, spread like wildfire. But it backfired spectacularly. The community, inspired by Lila's gala, rallied online, flooding social media with stories of her kindness, her work with young artists like Miguel, and her role in reviving the Grayson legacy. By midday, the hashtag #YourStandWithLila trended, and local news outlets condemned the article as baseless. Victoria, exposed as the source through leaked emails Nathan provided to the press, faced a storm of backlash, her social standing crumbling as donors and allies distanced themselves. Elliot, reading the news on his tablet, felt a surge of protectiveness. He wheeled to Lila's side, his voice low but firm. "She's done," he said, his eyes locked on hers. "I won't let her hurt you again." Lila's hand brushed his, a fleeting touch that sent warmth through him. "It's not about me," she said. "It's about what we're building here." Her words, always steady, anchored him, and he realized she was no longer just his lifeline. She was his future. That afternoon, Elliot made a decision that stunned even Nathan. He announced the creation of the Lila Carter Community Center, a haven for low-income families and people with disabilities, funded by his personal fortune. "It's not my legacy," he told the gathered guests, his voice strong despite the tremor in his hands. "It's hers. She showed me what hope looks like." The crowd erupted in applause, and Lila, standing beside him, felt tears prick her eyes, not from pride, but from the weight of his trust. As the sun set, the courtyard emptied, and Lila lingered by the fountain, its soft ripple a counterpoint to her racing heart. Elliot approached, his frame walker clicking against the stone, each step a testament to his progress. "Lila," he said, his voice raw with emotion, "you've given me more than mobility. You've given me a reason to live." He paused, his hand reaching for hers, his fingers trembling as he pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "I don't want to face another day without you. Will you marry me?" Lila's breath caught, her eyes searching his, finding not the broken man she'd met, but the one she'd helped rebuild. "Yes," she whispered, her smile radiant as he slipped a simple diamond ring onto her finger. The mountains stood witness as they embraced, their love a quiet triumph over pain and prejudice. The Lila Carter Community Center opened weeks later, with Elliot taking his first unaided steps beside her, his hand in hers. "You've changed everything," he said, his voice thick with love. And in that moment, under the aspen sky, they knew their legacy, built on trust, resilience, and love, would endure. This tale of Lila and Elliot is more than a story. It's a testament to the power of resilience, compassion, and love to heal even the deepest wounds. Through Lila's unwavering strength, we see that one person's belief can transform a broken soul and build a legacy of hope. Elliot's journey from despair to redemption reminds us that second chances are forged in courage, not privilege. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share what this story means to you, where you're watching from, and what time it is there. Your voice matters. Thank you for joining us on this unforgettable journey. Subscribe, stay connected, and we'll meet again with more stories that inspire. Until then, keep believing in the light that changes everything.